The story continues. My parents paid my wife $500,000 to leave me. I never saw this betrayal coming. The betrayal didn't end with the money. Now, we follow George's journey after everything collapsed. How did he survive the heartbreak? Did his wife ever come back home? Or did their marriage truly end that night? This episode reveals the truth, the pain, the choices, and the unexpected turn no one saw coming. Watch till the end to find out how it all unfolded. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, share, and turn on your notification bell for more powerful, real-life inspired stories. Healing wasn't dramatic. It was slow, honest, lonely. Lorraine called George unexpectedly. "I'd like to have dinner," she said. "Just us." George paused. "Why?" "I don't know how to exist without control," she admitted softly. "And I don't want to lose my son completely." Silence. Then George said, "One dinner. No conditions." That night, they sat across from each other, not as ruler and subject, but as two flawed adults. "I thought money could fix anything," Lorraine said. "I didn't know it could rot love," George replied calmly. "You didn't know because you never let love lead." Tears filled her eyes. For the first time, she listened. Erica ran into George at a bookstore months later. No tension. No drama. "I heard you're doing well," she said. "I am," George replied. She smiled sadly. "You deserved peace long before you found it." George nodded. "So did you." There was no talk of reconciliation. Some doors closed not because love died, but because trust learned its limit. They hugged briefly, then let go. Ariana met George's friends before his family. She noticed how he listened more than he spoke. "You've been taught to earn space," she said one evening. "I don't need that from you." Something loosened in his chest. Months later, when he told her the full story, money, betrayal, control, she didn't interrupt. When he finished, she asked only one question. "Do you trust yourself now?" George answered honestly, "Yes." She smiled. "That's all I needed to know." Lorraine showed up at George's door one afternoon. No designer coat. No sharp posture. "I'm not here to be forgiven," she said. "I'm here to be accountable." She handed him a handwritten letter. Inside were no excuses. Only responsibility. George didn't hug her. But he didn't close the door either. Healing didn't mean access. It meant boundaries with compassion. George stood at a youth mentorship event, watching young black boys laugh and build model bridges. Aaron nudged him. "You good." George smiled. "Better than good." He thought about legacy. Not wealth. Not control. But emotional safety. That was what he would pass down. Erica donated the last interest earned from the $500,000 to a domestic healing fund. No press. No announcement. Just closure. She finally slept peacefully that night. Ariana stood beside George on his balcony one evening. "This place feels warm," she said. He nodded. "Because it's chosen." She squeezed his hand. No contracts. No bribes. No conditions. Just presence. Some parents teach love through control. Some partners mistake fear for security. But healing teaches a harder truth. Anything that can be bought was never love to begin with. George learned that the expensive way. And survived it, with dignity. George learned something strange once his life stabilized. People started asking questions. Not about Erica. Not about his parents. But about why he never fought to get his marriage back. At a family cookout hosted by a cousin, someone finally said it out loud. "Man, if my parents paid my wife $500,000 to leave, I'd drag everybody to court." George smiled politely. "I didn't lose a wife. I learned who had access to me." That answer made people uncomfortable. But George had learned, clarity often does. Calvin Reed aged quickly after the stroke. He no longer commanded rooms. He observed them. One afternoon, while sitting in his study, He admitted something to Lorraine he had never said aloud. "We raised him to obey," Calvin said quietly, "not to trust himself." Lorraine didn't respond. The truth sat heavy between them. Their son hadn't rebelled. He had outgrown them. Even healthy love comes with fear. Ariana watched George sometimes, how he paused before responding, how he measured emotional space. One night she confessed, "I worry you're so healed you won't need me." George took her hand. "I don't need you to survive. I choose you to live well." Tears filled her eyes. That was the difference. Erica was invited to speak at a women's leadership retreat. No one knew her story. Until she told it. "I once let fear dress itself as wisdom," Erica said into the microphone. "I was offered money to walk away from love, and I took it." The room was silent. "I learned something painful," she continued. "When you sell your truth, you don't get freedom. You get silence." She didn't name George. She didn't need to. Her voice shook, but it didn't break. George received a message one morning. From his father. "I owe you an apology. Not as a provider. As a man." They met for coffee. Calvin didn't lecture. Didn't justify. "I thought strength meant control," Calvin said. "You taught me it means restraint." George nodded. "I needed you to see me, not manage me." Calvin lowered his head. "I see you now." It didn't erase the past, but it softened the future. Ariana didn't push. But one evening, she asked, "Do you believe in marriage again?" George considered it carefully. "Yes," he said. "Just not ownership." She smiled. "Good. Because I don't belong to anyone either." They laughed. That laughter felt like a promise. George bought land. Not a mansion. A house with big windows. Natural light. Open space. "When you build from healing," Ariana said, "you don't need walls." George agreed. This home would not hold secrets. Erica ran into George one final time, by chance. She looked peaceful. "I'm moving out of state," she said. "Good," George replied sincerely. She smiled. "Thank you for not hating me." George answered calmly, "Hate would have meant I still needed you." They shared a quiet understanding. And parted. Complete. George proposed to Ariana at the workshop where they met. No crowd. No pressure. Just truth. "I don't promise perfection," he said. "I promise honesty, boundaries, and choice." Ariana said yes, with tears and laughter. Lorraine watched her son from across the room at the engagement dinner. She didn't interfere. She didn't advise. She simply observed the man he became without her control. And for the first time, she was proud, for the right reason. George stood alone one night, looking at the city. He thought about money. How it had almost cost him everything. And how losing everything had taught him the most valuable lesson of all. Love that survives bribery was never real. Love that survives truth always is. George hesitated before sending the invitations. Not because he doubted Ariana, but because weddings have a way of exposing unfinished business. "You don't have to invite them," Ariana said gently, watching him stare at his laptop. "I know," George replied. "But I want to choose, not avoid." He sent invitations to his parents. Not as a peace offering. As a boundary. Lorraine held the invitation like it might burn her. "A simple ceremony," she read aloud. "No formal procession. No speeches from parents." Calvin looked up. "He's serious about his limits." Lorraine swallowed. "I don't know how to show love without leading." Calvin replied quietly, "Then learn to follow." For the first time in decades, Lorraine didn't argue. Ariana ran into Erica unexpectedly at a cafe. They recognized each other instantly. Erica spoke first. "You're with George." Ariana nodded. "I am." No tension. No competition. Erica smiled softly. He deserves peace. So do you, Ariana replied. They parted with mutual respect. George never even knew about the meeting. And that was okay. George didn't want a wild night. He wanted reflection. His friends gathered around a fire pit, laughter rising into the night. Aaron raised a drink. To the man who learned the hard way, and didn't become bitter. George smiled. Pain taught me discernment, not anger. They toasted to that. The night before the wedding, George sat alone in the new house. He remembered Erica, the money, the silence. Then he remembered Ariana's laughter earlier that day. Not loud, not forced, just present. He whispered to himself, I'm ready. The ceremony was held outdoors. Open sky. Soft music. No grandeur. Ariana walked in, not to impress, but to meet him. George's parents sat quietly in the second row. No front seats. No power. Just witnesses. George spoke first. I was taught love could be negotiated, he said. Today I choose love that cannot be bought. Ariana responded, I choose partnership, not possession. They exchanged rings. No one interrupted. As the couple walked back down the aisle, Lorraine cried. Not loudly, not performatively, but with understanding. She leaned toward Calvin and whispered, We almost ruined him. Calvin answered, But he didn't let us. No speeches from parents. No money talk. Just friends, music, warmth. Lorraine approached George carefully. You look happy, she said. I am, George replied. She nodded. That's enough for me. For the first time, it was. Erica saw photos online later that night. George smiling. Ariana glowing. She didn't cry. She whispered, That's how it should have been. And let go. Marriage didn't change George. It revealed him. He and Ariana disagreed sometimes, but never competed. They chose repair over power. Always. Months later, George spoke at a university panel on leadership. He said one sentence that went viral. Family is not who controls you. It's who respects your boundaries. That line traveled far. George didn't cut his parents off. He placed them correctly. They visited. They listened. They learned. And that was enough. George stood in his backyard one evening, Ariana beside him. No noise. No pressure. No price tag on love. He had lost a marriage. But he had gained himself. And this time, no one could buy him away. Marriage didn't come with fireworks. It came with quiet mornings and honest conversations. 3 months in, George lost a major contract at work. Old George would have panicked. New George sat at the kitchen table with Ariana. I feel that familiar pressure, he admitted. The voice that says I'm failing. Ariana reached for his hand. Then let's answer it together. No blame. No fear. Just partnership. And that made all the difference. One evening, Ariana asked a hard question. Does money still scare you? George didn't answer right away. It doesn't scare me, he said finally. But I respect its power. Ariana nodded. Then we agree on something important. Money never gets to vote on our love. They created financial boundaries together. Transparency. Shared decisions. No silent deals. Lorraine called late one night. Her voice was small. I think I'm afraid of being irrelevant, she confessed. If I don't manage, I disappear. George listened, then said gently, You don't need power to matter. You need presence. There was a long pause. I don't know how to do that, she whispered. Then learn, George replied. I did. George dreamed of his younger self one night. A boy sitting quietly while adults talked over him. He woke up with tears in his eyes. Ariana held him. That boy didn't fail, she said softly. He survived. George exhaled. Healing wasn't forgetting. It was honoring what endured. Years later, a letter arrived. From Erica. She wrote briefly, "I'm married now. Not to escape, but to choose. I wanted you to know that the lesson you lived helped save me from repeating myself. Thank you." George smiled, folded the letter, and released it. One Sunday afternoon, Ariana asked, "Do you want kids?" George didn't rush. "Yes," he said, "but only if I can love without control." Ariana smiled. "Then you're already prepared." Their son, Eli, was born on a quiet morning. George held him carefully. No expectations. No projections. Just awe. "I won't trade you for anything," George whispered. "Not even comfort." Ariana watched with tears. The cycle stopped here. Calvin visited once, holding his grandson. "I thought being a good father meant shaping outcomes," he said quietly. George replied, "It means protecting dignity." Calvin nodded. "I learned too late." George shook his head. "You learned. That mattered." Eli would never know. Being compared, love being conditional, silence used as punishment. George made sure of that. One evening, George sat on the same balcony where his life once felt empty. Now, Ariana laughed inside. Eli slept peacefully. George thought of the $500,000. How it tried to buy his ending. Instead, it funded his beginning. Some stories end in revenge. Others end in reunion. George's ended in alignment. He didn't win by getting his wife back. He didn't win by punishing his parents. He won by choosing himself, without bitterness. And that choice echoed forward.